Hello, Lenawee County. My name is Brian Vish, and here's what's happening this week in Lenawee.
Accurate, dependable, and late-breaking. This is local and state news on WLEN, Lenawee's local news station.
A longtime Lenawee County roadside landmark has been destroyed following an act of vandalism earlier this month. The Happy Family of Palmyra, a display of mannequins known for waving at passing drivers along US 223, was found severely damaged. The figures, which had stood for nearly 4 decades, were torn apart and scattered across the property. The display was originally created by a local truck driver as a way to bring a sense of connection and encouragement to others on the road, especially long-haul drivers traveling through the area. Family members say the loss has been difficult for the community as the installation has become a recognizable and meaningful symbol for many in Lenawee County. A report has been filed with the Lenawee County Sheriff's Office. In response, efforts are now underway to rebuild the display using more durable materials, with community members already expressing interest in supporting the restoration. A GoFundMe has been set up to assist the effort. The Lenawee Historical Society says renovation work at the museum is nearing the finish line, with plastering and painting almost complete and cleanup expected to begin in the coming days. The museum stayed open throughout construction for school groups. The final renovation phase will involve light fixture repairs and replacements and fire and smoke detector upgrades. Community service workers have aided the Historical Society with tasks like scanning negatives, entering data into the museum database, watering new plants, and controlling construction dust. At the same time, the museum is planning exhibit improvements, including reducing clutter, rotating artifacts more regularly, and using a new exhibit case as a focal point for changing displays. Staff say the work is expected to continue through much of the summer. And looking ahead, the Historical Society says its partnership with the Croswell Theater will continue, with a special museum program planned in April to mark the Croswell's 160th anniversary, followed by a special exhibit on the theater in the Durst Room later this summer. Adrian Dominican Sisters are inviting the public to a presentation next month focused on one of Detroit's most historic Black communities. The event will take place Thursday, April 9th at 6 p.m. in the Weber Center Auditorium on the Adrian Dominican Sisters campus. Marcia Black, co-director of Archives and Education for the Black Bottom Archives, will speak about Detroit's Black Bottom neighborhood and Paradise Valley Business District, which were once home to hundreds of Black-owned businesses before being demolished in the 1950s and early 1960s. Organizers say the presentation will highlight the people, businesses, and cultural impacts of the district often referred to as Detroit's Black Wall Street. The event is open to the public, and no registration is required. The United Way of Monroe and Lenawee counties is marking a major milestone this spring. The organization will celebrate 100 years of service with a special anniversary gala set for Saturday, May 9th at the Monroe Golf and Country Club. The event begins at 5 p.m. and will feature Roaring Twenties themes, including a speakeasy-style happy hour, dinner, and a program recognizing key contributors and partners from the past century. United Way was originally founded in April of 1926 as the Community Chest and has since grown to support dozens of local programs across both Monroe and Lenawee counties. Today, the organization funds 32 local agency programs, supports additional partner agencies, and helps coordinate services like 211, Project Ramp, and community health events. Tickets for the gala are priced at $125 per person or $1,200 for a table of 10, with sponsorship opportunities also available. More information, including ticket purchases, can be found at the United Way of Monroe and Lenawee County's website. Congressman Tim Walberg called into the morning show with Dale Gartner to discuss ongoing debates in Washington over Homeland Security funding and election-related legislation. Walberg says the Homeland Security funding bill has already passed the House with bipartisan support and argues the delay in the Senate could have national security implications.
We passed it twice already in the House. It was a bipartisan bill. That's what's so frustrating, Dale. It was a bipartisan bill coming out of the Appropriations Committee with all 12 bills, 11 others, and the Homeland Security bill. Homeland Security at this time, when you think of the war going on in Iran, with bad actors taking place right in Michigan, I mean, we have to take this seriously.
Funding for the Department of Homeland Security is currently tied up in broader budget negotiations, with some agencies facing disruptions during a partial shutdown while essential services continue operating. Walberg has also voiced support for the SAVE Act, which would require documentary proof of citizenship to register for federal elections, though federal law already requires voters to be U.S. citizens.
The SAVE Act simply says that you can't vote unless you're a citizen of the United States in a federal election. Michigan has the law in place, but we've had our leadership, the top levels, including the Secretary of State, tell clerks that they don't have to require an ID. We do not want to go through what we've gone through in the last two elections, where there's assertions that there's election impropriety going on and illegal people voting in the election.
The proposal would change voter registration requirements nationwide and remains under consideration in the Senate. The Tecumseh Downtown Development Authority has received a $16,000 grant from the Michigan Arts and Culture Council to support the city's 2026 art trail. I spoke with Mayor Brian Radon about the grant.
The DDA was just notified last week of that $16,000 grant from the Michigan Arts and Culture Council in support of this year's art walk. This year they're planning on about 11 pieces of art that'll be downtown and throughout town.
City officials say the funding comes through the state's Experience Support Program and will help support artists' participation, installation of artworks, and promotion of the annual Downtown Public Art Initiative.
That brings a lot of people to downtown, not only our local residents, they enjoy walking around and looking at those pieces of art, but we hear from the businesses downtown that it does actually a pretty good job of bringing in people from outside of Tecumseh and even outside of Lenawee County. There's usually a large variety. You know, not everybody's going to like every piece of art that's out there, but there's going to be some that catches your eye. So if you're just coming downtown to grab something to eat and you're walking out of the restaurant and you happen to see that piece of art and then you realize there's more and more. So that just gets people to move downtown through the streets and into all the stores.
The Tecumseh Art Trail features temporary art installations placed throughout the downtown district, encouraging residents and visitors to explore local businesses while engaging with arts and culture. I'm Brian Vish for WLEN, Lenawee's local news station. Adrian City Commissioners have approved plans for a new downtown square project with one key change. The commission voted Monday to move forward with the development, but not before approving an amendment to remove the planned fire pits from the design. Some commissioners raised concerns about safety and long-term liability leading to the change. I spoke with City Manager Chad Baugh about the decision.
Fire pit overall was just affect maybe the warmth and maybe some aesthetics. The ideas around that will come and generate from Lenawee now and its partnership with the city. I'm not really certain. You know, my main goal is to make sure that it's legal, make sure that it's within the constraints of the enhancement grants. We support Lenawee now and their ability to administrate the grant properly.
The project will include space for food trucks, public restrooms, seating areas, lighting, and green space. Officials say the goal is to create a central gathering place downtown. The Town Square project is expected to cost about $2.8 million and will be funded through grants with no direct cost to the city.
We'd like for that to be kind of driven by a subcommittee, which represents the citizens of Adrian. But in short, losing the fire pits or having the fire pits taken away, I think it's makes a lot of sense for safety reasons. personally, as a person who doesn't like cold weather, I like fire pits, but I don't want to see anyone injured, so I think it's responsible and a measured approach. So
I'm Brian Vish for WLEN, Lenawee's local news station. Adrian educator Bob Banky and executive director of the Adrian Diversity Event Fund and founder of the Lenawee Pop-Up Holocaust Museum has received international recognition.
From a personal standpoint, just really excited about the opportunity to study abroad in Poland and to work kind of hand in hand with curators and preservationists from the Auschwitz exhibit. The museum's just world renowned for all their work in preservation and telling the story of the Holocausts, and that's one of the things that I've been doing here in Adrian, is telling that story.
He was selected as one of 25 educators worldwide to attend the highly selective week-long International Summer Academy at the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum. The program offers educators, historians, and museum professionals in-depth study, archival access, and discussions on Holocaust history education.
There's those connections, those professional connections to that staff, to other teachers and other educators. There were 25 of us that were selected from around the world that are going to participate in this program. So, what experience and background and expertise can they share so that helps us here in Lenawee understand the ramifications of the Holocaust and how to teach it best today.
Banky, a former Adrian Public Schools superintendent, says the opportunity will allow him to work directly with experts and engage with primary historical materials at Auschwitz.
When we're at Auschwitz, one of the things that we're going to be working specifically with are the archivists. So people who are recording and preserving letters and documents from the camp. And here locally, we have some letters from Auschwitz that are on display. That's that item right over there. But the unique thing that we have with this letter here is from Dachau. What's the rest of the story with this individual? And this letter from Dachau here really tells a man's story, and we were able to find his belongings of what he had with him when he arrived at Dachau. That's the rest of the story with some of these letters that we have in our community thanks to a rare book collector.
The Academy includes guided study tours of Auschwitz I and Auschwitz II Birkenau, and along with workshops focused on education, preservation, and historical interpretation.
That's the piece of we can bring back knowledge of those individuals and what their story was. All of those letters that we have, they were political prisoners. So they were, in most cases, the letters we have here, they were Catholic, so they were not Jewish, and that kind of opens the door to people that think, oh, I thought the Holocaust was only the murder of 6 million Jewish individuals. And we see that it's a much bigger question here and a bigger response in terms of the number of people that were oppressed and victims of Nazi persecution.
The Lenawee Pop-Up Holocaust Museum in downtown Adrian continues to serve as a hub for Holocaust education, featuring artifacts, survivor stories, and traveling exhibits.
This museum wraps up on April 26th, and then the big panels that you see behind us, those continue on as part of the traveling exhibit from the Zeckelman Holocaust Center. And the local items that we curated here, really that unique piece is that we get to keep those here in Lenawee County. One of the important pieces with the Zeckelman Holocaust Center is they've been providing professional development here in this museum to teachers locally, and then now that we have that connection that's starting to build with teachers here, one of the amazing things is that they offer a grant process so that they'll help cover transportation costs so that Lenawee County schools can go up to the Holocaust Center there in Metro Detroit.
The International Summer Academy is scheduled to take place later this year in Poland. I'm Brian Vish for WLEN, Lenawee's local news station. Jackson County is rolling out a new effort aimed at attracting young professionals and boosting home ownership, with incentives of up to $60,000 for qualifying buyers. It's part of the new Build in Jackson program tied to the city's ongoing push to develop new housing and grow its workforce. I spoke with Community Growth Fellow Alexi Milken to learn more about how the program works, who it's designed for, and what it could mean for both new and current residents in the area. Just to kind of kick things off, I do want to just start simple. So, what problem is Build in Jackson trying to solve, and why tie home ownership directly to workforce attraction?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest issues that Jackson County is looking to solve is population challenges, right? So when we look at our population demographic like curve, it's this really weird U shape where you can just totally visibly see this hollowing out of the middle, and that represents the 18 to 35-year-old population. So largely working age people. And then you see that there's, a lot of folks who are aged, a lot of folks who are in the younger category. But when this happens, right, this middle age kind of hollows out, it can create a lot of challenges, workforce challenges, challenges with tax revenue and maintaining local infrastructure. And frankly, it's also sad. You have a lot of people who've talked about their children and grandchildren, nieces, nephews, teachers talk about their students having to move away for opportunity or, affordability reasons or college. And when those people leave, they're missed. We're projected to lose another 10% of our population by 2050. And that's something that we really wanted to tackle head on. So we've gone about this a few different ways. One of the big ones we just wrapped up was Drive Jackson. So that was a creation of a 20-year strategic vision plan where we talked to 1,300 residents and we asked everybody, what would need to happen for you to stay in Jackson County? And what would need to happen for you to convince people that you love, people you care about, to say Jackson is the best place for you? We got wonderful responses, and it really spans the gamut across all kinds of different priority areas. One of the big places, though, was home ownership. So Build in Jackson, 100 homes, those are all efforts to kind of tackle our population challenges in some creative ways and address what residents are saying.
Excellent. Yeah, and I definitely can empathize with the home ownership aspect of this.
For sure.
It's actually what kind of drew me to the story. In particular, that headline number you guys have, that $40,000 to $60,000. That's pretty significant.
It's massive. It's actually I believe so. Most generous homeownership program in the Midwest. The reason we can't say the nation is because we looked at New York City and they do offer a significant incentive. Though I would say our incentive goes further in the state of Michigan for affordability purposes. Yeah. But part of what we talked to, in the Drive Jackson plan is we try to ask people what makes you proud to be a Jackson resident. And something that a lot of people said is this was a place, Michigan and Jackson County, that kind of pioneered the middle class. This was a place where you could contribute to making a car and drive that car, a place where you could, contribute to, production of homes, work in construction and own a home. And that was something that was so distinct for its time, the fact that people could build a life here, a stable life, and raise a family in a time when it felt like you couldn't do that anywhere else. That's something that really excites people. It's a legacy that people are proud of. And it's one that I definitely identify with. Neither of my parents went to college. My dad worked for Schwann, so he was, moving goods, to different locations. He was the ice cream man. It was wonderful. And my mother's a local preschool teacher of, about a decade or so. And this was a place where they could own a home, raise a family, feel safe. They could enjoy, all kinds of outdoor amenities because we've got, these great parks and trails and, lakefronts. And that's something that I identify really strong with. And I think a lot of, especially young people do. I think we're all looking right for a place where we can build our lives in a time where these things feel impossible. So that's part of the reason why this program is so exciting is I think it's building on some of the needs that we're all really cognizant of, especially around homeownership and affordability.
Absolutely. And so how is this funding structured? So what strings are attached for participants who want to join it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, right, $40,000 to $60,000 in down payment assistance. It's building off of the 100 homes program in Jackson County. We've got about 40 homes, it looks like, still left for folks to go ahead and enjoy. So part of this is it's a program that builds off of City of Jackson's lots. So I think they said they have 400 or so lots. And these lots are all available, right? And we want to make sure that they're in productive use, that people can live on them, and et cetera. They're being used. So part of this program is to, incentivize new builds on those different properties. So, right, 40 to 60,000. How folks can apply for that is through the 100 Homes Program's website. And I do want to emphasize that program is open to any age category. It's open to residents of Jackson County. It's just open to, folks state of Michigan and across the nation. That is an open program. So, maybe you're not in that age range of young professional for Build in Jackson, which is that additive layer of, mentorship, wraparound support, professional development opportunities. But though, you might not be in that demographic, you would still be able to qualify for 100 homes. Part of that process, right, is to fill out that application on their website and then get pre-qualified for a mortgage and kind of go through that, standard home buying process. And then we also have an interest form on our website, which is to indicate if you are, a young professional who's looking to build your life in Jackson County. So that could be representative of somebody who's a recent college grad from like Spring Arbor University, Jackson College, and you're looking to stay here. It could be somebody like me, somebody who someone who's raised in Jackson County and, went off to college. I went to Michigan State and then the University of Michigan, and now is like, I want to go back home. I want to go back home and see my family. So it could encompass that. It also could be somebody who isn't from Jackson County, for instance, like, a nurse, a teacher, somebody who's looking to come for workforce opportunities that we have in spades, here in the county. So what we're really looking for is to create a diverse cohort of young professionals for the Build in Jackson program, layer in these, home buying opportunities, but also opportunities for community integration, and really just help our community grow.
Absolutely. And that is interesting to hear the part of it, not the, the Drive Jackson, but the Build in Jackson had that aspect of support for the younger folks who would be qualifying for that. Because that was something I did want to ask about.
Totally.
In particular, because programs like this often skew towards younger professionals, as we're discussing, 18 years old. But realistically, a lot of people in that range are still in some type of training,
right,
school, or even an entry-level job where they're just starting off in the world.
Yep.
So with the bulk of it, that's why I wanted to ask, was there something for, say, the older folks who might be in their early 40s, but still in that position where they're having a hard time getting a home?
100%. So 100 Homes, as I said, is for all kinds of different people. My mother is, actually, I don't think she'd like me to talk about her age on the radio, but she's a lovely person. She's wonderful, but she's not, in that 18 to 34 cohort, but she doesn't own a home, and it's something that's been out of reach for a lot of, folks. So that's why I'm really glad that the 100 Homes program is so expansive, and so many, people of all kinds of different, backgrounds representing different experiences can participate. That made me feel really excited. And, I send her the link every day to apply for it. So we'll see if she does. But we wanted to have this additive layer for young people. I know you're speaking to how it already seems like there's a lot of programs for young people out there. And I do hear that. But at the same time, when we look at a lot of really important milestones or mile markers of prosperity, young people in ages 18 to 34 are being left behind in some really major ways nationally. So when we look at home ownership rates, those are pretty significantly not elevated compared to other cohorts. When we look at poverty rates, it is highest for ages 18 to 35. When we look at unemployment rates, very, very high for that age category, especially among recent college grads. So this is a population that is feeling left behind, for large part because they're being left behind. Another statistic that's super, just relevant to this homeownership piece is that 1 in 10 Gen Zers feel that they will never be able to buy a home, ever. 1 in 5 millennials say the same thing. And, I think the rebuttal to that might be, oh, maybe they don't want a home. But, that isn't correct either. When we talk to young people, especially in Gen Z, I think it's just under 90% that say home ownership is core to the American dream. So it's this, really tragic mismatch, right, of people who are really looking for home ownership, but also feel consistently priced out. So that's why I'm really excited that Jackson's raised its hand in such an important way to make sure that young people have this opportunity to attain a home and to be, ingrained in a community. Because at this time, I think a lot of folks are feeling left behind.
No, I agree. I'm 37. So I'm in the millennial category for that 1 in 5. Yep. So I do agree with this, and that's why I wanted to press that, just to show this is an issue that does affect,
100%.
yes, it affects older folks, but there's a large amount of the younger generation who are having a hard time just getting their lives started.
Right.
And
And
so,
that's exactly what Build in Jackson is meant to be for those folks. So 100 Homes helps get everybody into, pathways to homeownership. But Build in Jackson is exactly what you're saying. Getting that start can be the most lucrative piece of this, because how can you build anything if you don't have a solid foundation?
yes. And so now I know you are tying this to newly constructed homes. How many units, I don't remember if you actually had mentioned this, how many units are actually available? And is there a risk for demand outpacing supply very quickly?
Yeah, so we have, let's see, so 100 Homes program. We have 50 something that, I think are currently in progress or have already been built, and then 40 something in terms of ones that are still available. So I know you mentioned demand. I will say that the program, it looks like, has been live for, a year, maybe two. So it has been out there for a second, folks have had, there's been some time to apply that kind of thing. So actually what we're looking to do right now is continue to circulate the opportunity. We'd like to see more applications in for this program, and we'd like to make sure that people are, well aware of how wonderful it is and are able to go ahead and apply for it. It's 100 units, and for the Build in Jackson program, it's 10 slots. But the exciting thing about, I appreciate you mentioning demand, is if we look at our Build in Jackson program and demand outpaces that, those 10, potentially with an understanding that there are, over 100, lots in the city of Jackson, potentially there could be room to, largen that cohort. It all depends on the kinds of applications that we get in, and, making sure that this is something that folks want to be a part of.
Awesome. So I know we have the down payment assistance, but even with down payment help, buyers still have to carry the mortgage. So what does affordability look like after the incentive? Are these homes realistically attainable for, say, mid-income workers?
This is something we wanted to be really cognizant of. So obviously you have to be pre-approved for a mortgage. The market price of the home is already at a reduced level. So that's really helpful, especially because this is a new build. So part of what's really exciting is you need to be, under 120% AMI to be a part of the 100 Homes program. So for a single person, that's around $70,000. In Jackson County, I think the median income is something in the ballpark of 60. I think it's a bit around like $60,000. So it is meant to be priced that we're cognizant of that price point, right? When we think about middle income earners. Yeah. So that is a wonderful piece of this. I think the other thing too is when it comes to homeownership and affordability, a lot of, as you're kind of referencing, these additional expenses can come after you've bought the house. So a lot of folks in Jackson County are in aged housing, and we know that with that comes, cracked foundations. It comes with, windows needing replacing, roofing, floor panels being replaced,
the general maintenance,
HVAC, absolutely general maintenance.
Yep.
I think that's part of what makes this program so exciting, because it is for a new build, meaning a lot of those, routine maintenance, kind of necessities that might come with buying a home that's, been on the market for, a few years or decades. Those aren't concerns, because everything is, brand new, which is really helpful. So I think that from an affordability perspective, that also is really useful.
Awesome. And so I know part of this is also attracting talent. And a lot of communities try to do this, but they often struggle to keep that talent in home. So what's in place to ensure that participants don't just leave, take the incentive and leave a few years later?
Yep. Yeah. This is really helpful, Brian. So part of this is just the necessity of, buying the home. When you're in the home, the way that the mortgage is structured is 5 years. So that's already 5 years that somebody is going to be, a part of this community, and it must be tenant occupied. It isn't something that somebody can rent out. So that in itself is a massive driver of, that retention piece of things. But this also makes it really exciting when we think about how we built the Build in Jackson program, because so much of that is an emphasis upon folks being able to join membership organizations to get them integrated into community events and meeting other people in the community. Wraparound support is meant to be a part of the program too. So maybe that means, if folks have kids, making sure that they're, able to integrate them into the school system. If they're into parks and recreation, that's going to be a big part of this as well, right? We've got wonderful natural amenities, and those are highly rated. When we ask so my former role was actually with the state's population growth office. And in my role, part of what I did was speak to people across the state and the nation about what is the most important thing when you think about where you want to build your life.
Yeah.
Affordability, especially with housing, number one, every single time we asked it. So that already is a great sticking point for attention. But when we look at what else was always consistently top 5, walkability was huge. That's why it's pretty exciting, because with this Build in Jackson program, we're actually looking to make sure that those homes are located within the walking radius of the city of like downtown Jackson, and with the radius of the other participants. So already there's this kind of a piece of walkability there. So these like amenities in the downtown spaces, it's dense and it's right there. Another piece of this, right, is outdoor recreation that is also consistently rated top 5. So we're really excited that we're going to get this opportunity to get people acclimated with our trails, our waterways, and all of the, you know, beautiful public amenities that we've got that are natural. Just because we know that from a retention standpoint, this is what young people consistently say. This is a reason why I would stay somewhere. This is something that would retain me. So we really intentionally designed this program with those kind of facets in mind. And I think the thought is here, right? If folks are getting that intentional wraparound support across, you know, a year, and then they're staying here for 5 years, you know, that in itself is quite a massive difference.
Well, and also with, you know, building everything kind of close to the downtown area for the walking, but also in a similar neighborhood, you're almost creating that community built in as you're going into the program. So it does kind of help, I think, in that regard, because you would have automatically built-in neighbors like, oh, we're in the same program kind of thing. But
for people to get to know each other, right, and get to know this community. And that is going to be a big part of the application in itself. What we're looking for is people who see themselves building their lives in Jackson. And that's what we're going to be looking for, right? How does Jackson, like specifically, fit into the plan of your life? What about it, you know, appeals to you? But also, this program, how does this program help you get your start? So we're going to be looking for people who can speak to those things. And, you know, as somebody who grew up here, I love this community. My family lives in this community. I'm really excited to hear what people have to say on that front.
Nice. So what does success look like in, say, 5 years? Are you guys measuring this in homes built, people retained, or maybe broader economic growth?
Yeah, totally. So we're still doing some work on the back end to, you know, this is still in progress. Actually, we put this together in just, you know, a few short weeks, which is really, really exciting. So I think part of measurement is going to be speaking with the folks who are part of this initial pilot. So pilot means we're trying something out, we're going to see how it goes. So I think a big part of this is going to be asking about their experience and seeing, you know, what supports were most useful, which ones weren't there, but, you know, potentially could be. A lot of this also depends, you know, how we measure on who's a part of that initial cohort. For instance, if a lot of the applicants we get are young families, probably some of what we, you know, want to talk to them about is what could be helpful to you as a young family moving into an area, or, you know, being retained in an area. Is it, you know, childcare support? Is it, you know, more access or connection points with, you know, amenities that are geared around children? So, you know, that all depends on the different applications that we get as a part of this cohort. Or maybe it's a bunch of recent college graduates that end up applying and they say, you know, we just got here. What's most important to us are exposure opportunities for career development or mentorship. So a lot of what we measure is probably going to be pretty closely connected to who winds up in the cohort.
Awesome. And so I guess for the last thing before we wrap up today, what is, out of everything we've covered so far today, what is something that we haven't that maybe you want to make sure that the folks in Michigan and around Jackson here in Lenawee know about this program?
Absolutely. So I think what I'd probably address in this program are a few things. Firstly, part of what makes this exciting is how intentional it's been built, right? So where a lot of this thinking kind of started is with the Drive Jackson strategic plan, where we were talking with over 1,000 Jackson residents about what they'd like to see in this community. And actually so many people brought up, we want opportunities for young people, and homeownership, that we've created these intentional programs about that. I think, especially lately, people are looking for communities that don't just talk about important issues, but are actually doing things about those issues. I know that's something that matters to me very, very much. I'm really action oriented, and I think a lot of people are kind of hungry for that, for people who are doers. And in Jackson, this has been really, really important to see, right? Because we've got this plan, but also, you know, we said home ownership is important to us, and our giving $40,000 to $60,000 to people to get into a home. We said building intentional pathways for young people is important to us. And we've created this program that has tons of different partners that are going to be a part of it in order to make sure that people feel integrated into this community and are able to stay here. So we raise our hands often and say that public parks, our trails, our lakes, our waterways are really important to us. And we've got some wonderful projects in the works towards, trail expansion and just developing our outdoor recreational amenities. Some of those are still in the works and can't talk about them quite yet, but they're very exciting. So this is something where we are doing things that matter to our residents and to people across the state of Michigan. And that's an exciting place to be situated in. It's a place where you can have, a really sizable impact because there's momentum here. So that I think is the most important, kind of illustrative thing that I think these projects and programs, show.
I'm Brian Vish for WLEN News, and that'll wrap it up for us this week in Lenawee.
Count on WLEN, Lenawee's local news station, to keep you informed with accurate and dependable information 24 hours a day.